What if we stopped wishing for more time and we started thinking about how we can make the most out of the time we already have? That is the topic of today's episode and is something that I am very passionate about as a discussion point in business. I work with so many different entrepreneurs, and whilst everyone's business is different and everyone's challenges look unique, there is one challenge and one kind of complaint and sticky point that everyone without fail will mention to me at some point. We'll be talking about a strategy or a plan or an idea, and the word that comes up is time. Not feeling like we have enough time, not feeling like we've got the time that we want for something. If I had £1 for every time someone has said to me, I wish I could just have more time, or I just need more time, or I just need to have more time, I probably wouldn't need to do what I do because I hear it so often. And here's the thing, I get it, right? It is a problem. It is a very finite resource that we have, but it's so unhelpful and actually unproductive to just be thinking about how we can make ourselves more time. Because for so many of us, that is not a viable solution. We are likely already giving our businesses as much time as we are able to, as much time as we want to. And even if we could give our businesses more time, it's all a trade-off, right? Maybe you're listening to this feeling like your time is at max capacity, or maybe you're listening to this thinking, I'm giving my business more time than I want right now. So obviously the solution isn't to make more time. Actually, if anything, I need to have less time spent in my business. Well, if that is you, this conversation today is going to resonate because I want us to stop thinking about having more time and actually just start thinking about how we can make better use of the time we already have. Productivity is something that I have a real interest in. I find it a really fascinating topic, and I find a lot of the conversations around it really interesting as well. I think it's so easy for productivity to become a little bit of a buzzword where we're just learning all of these hacks and blueprints and secrets, when in reality, I don't think it's a topic like that. I don't think there's one thing that is going to solve our productivity issues for life. I don't think it's ever quite that simple. But I do think at its core, the concept of productivity is really powerful because what we're thinking about is how do we support ourselves in being the most efficient and therefore effective versions of ourselves as possible. And that is something I'm definitely interested in. I recognize that my business is incredibly reliant on me, on my input, on my time, on my energy, ultimately on my action. And I want my business to achieve all my goals and reach the maximum potential that it has. And I know that the direct correlation with that output is my input. So that's why I'm so interested by productivity. Not because I want to be productive for productive's sake. I don't care about being productive. I care about being productive because I know that helps me to maximize my output and therefore do more with my business. I am all for productivity from the angle of how do we either just do more with the time that we've got, or how do we actually do more with the time that we've got and therefore work less? I love that way of looking at productivity. It doesn't just have to be about get more done in the hours and then you can get even more stuff done. If that's right for you, then that's right for you. But I also like looking at this through the lens of what if being more productive was also about getting more time back for ourselves? Having less time where we're working, or perhaps more time where we're able to work on other things that are important or interesting to us. So that is what I want to talk about today. And as I said in the intro, I don't believe there is one solution that is going to solve our kind of productivity issues forever. I've definitely experienced in my 9 years of business now that my productivity has ebbed and flowed. And over the years, there's been different things that have helped me to be more productive. And over time, those things might have stopped working and I've had to try something else. So with that in mind, I thought I could share today 4 current things that I am doing in my business that categorically save me time and I have no doubt play a big role in me being more productive. These things are proven. They are not just things that I've, thought of and thought, oh yeah, I don't really do that, but I'm sure that would help people. These are literally things where if you were to follow me in my business for a month, you would see me doing these things. And I have definitely seen since introducing each of these things over, the past few weeks, months, years, there has been a direct link between doing that thing and me feeling like I'm getting more out of my time, I'm working more effectively. So without further ado, I'm going to share these 4 things with you. Big disclaimer to say that not all of these might be right for you. You might hear a couple and your ears will prick up and it will resonate and you'll think, oh, maybe that's something I want to test out. Great, take that with you. There might be some things that I share where you're like, I've tried that before, it doesn't work for me, or I just know that that's not going to be a right fit. Let that tip, let that, whatever it is, hack, I hate the word hacks, but you know what I mean, pass you by. I don't want you to feel pressured to do all of these things for the sake of it. They are tools in a toolbox. Only pick the tool up if you think it's actually going to help you achieve your end result. So let's begin with my first habit, which has actually been quite a recent one for me, but has genuinely been a game changer. Bit of context to the backstory of why I started doing this thing. I, in January, arrived back to my desk ready to dive into my business to discover that my Apple Calendar had combusted. I don't know the technical words for it, but I looked at my calendar and like barely anything was there. And when I tell you I had a bit of a freak out, not exaggerating. My whole life, my whole business is run via my calendar. I have a lot of meetings booked in, a lot of different strategy days and events and things in my calendar that they're in my calendar. They're not anywhere else. That's how I know what's going on. And I then frantically checked my phone and my iPad and I was like, oh my gosh, it's literally nowhere. And I freaked out. Then I realized, okay, I know where to look for to back all of these things up. However, the silver lining of that was that it gave me an opportunity to move from Apple Calendar to Google Calendar. I have been using Apple Calendar for the entirety of my business. And it's that thing of I've just always used it. So you stay there and it feels like too much faff to move. Well, I always had this sense that Google Calendar was probably going to be a bit better for me, but just didn't make the change. And so the silver lining of Apple Calendar literally kicking me off of its platform is that I set up Google Calendar. And one of the things that I've been really loving about Google Calendar is the tasks function, where as well as just obviously booking in meetings or events, you can book in these 30-minute tasks, which you can literally tick off and mark as completed. And if you don't tick off, it'll kind of show you at the end of the day and of the week, here's all the things you haven't done. Now, I've been using these tasks in a lot of different ways. If I know I need to do something in a couple of days or weeks' time, I'll just pop it into that day as a task. So it reminds me of that when I'm looking at my calendar in the morning. And I've also been using it with reoccurring tasks. And it's reoccurring tasks that have really been the game changer for me. So what kind of led me to start to set these up was I realized how many things in my business I do on a kind of regular basis. I was actually writing a refreshed job description for myself. Side note, if you do not have a job description for yourself as the business owner, let this be your reminder to create one, because the fact that we only create job descriptions for other people and we never have clarity on our own role is crazy to me. And I was updating my job description because my business is evolving this year. And I was writing out all of the kind of regular admin tasks that I need to do daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly. And usually I would just kind of remember, I need to make sure I do my weekly admin tasks on maybe a Monday or a Friday. But actually what I've started to do now is add them into my Google Calendar as tasks. So to give an example, one of my weekly tasks is to pay any invoices. And so I've just added to a Monday afternoon this little task that's pay invoices. Or another example is once a month, I'll track all of my metrics and check in on my goals and my progress. So again, I've put those things in as 30-minute tasks that just reoccur on the afternoon of the first Monday of every month. And I've done the same for quarterly tasks that I do and write down as well to the daily, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. And that may seem so simple, and maybe that's something you already do, but for me, that's been a game changer, because what it's done is it's taken away that mental load where I'm having to remember to do these things. I don't have to think, I need to make sure that I do that weekly task. I just see it in my calendar. And even if I don't do it at the exact time I've put it in for, I can move it about, or at least I just have a visual on it. So I'm so much more likely to get it done. And I'm not having that horrible feeling all day or week of I need to remember to do that thing. I forgot to do that thing. Because that is really tiring. So utilizing reoccurring tasks and grouping together the things that I do every day, week, month, quarter has been so helpful, and means that I get all of those jobs done at once. So my weekly admin, I just sit down for 2 hours, bash all of those individual tasks out. I'm in the zone, so I'm more kind of efficient, and then they're done and I don't have to think about it. So that is the first thing I've done that's really, really helped my productivity and save me time, is understanding what are the roles I do that are reoccurring and how can I actually plan those into my calendar. And that actually links to the second thing that I have been doing to save me time, which is having a morning and an end of day admin sweep. One of the things that I realized when I was reflecting on my role is there's a fair bit of like daily admin I have to keep on top of. I use emails, I use WhatsApp, and I also use Asana as my client portal. And all three of those places require me to be in there kind of at least once a day. And what I realized was that for a lot of last year, I was just kind of jumping in and out of those spaces throughout the day. I'd maybe look at the start of the day, reply to a couple, maybe I'd then look mid-morning, more would come in, I'd start to feel a bit overwhelmed. And this like everyday admin was like taking over my whole day when it just didn't need to. So what I've been doing over the last 6 weeks or so is an admin sweep. That's what I call it, because I feel like I'm just sweeping away all the admin at the very start and the very end of the day. So I have this as a reoccurring task, and usually it is the very first and the very last thing that I do when I get to my desk. So in the morning, I'll come to my desk and I'll go through those three things. I'll check my emails, delete the ones I don't need, put things into folders. And if there's urgent ones that need replies like ASAP, I reply to them right then. If not, I pop them in a folder to reply to at the end of the week. I'll then check my WhatsApps and reply to every single WhatsApp I've got that needs replying, so nothing's left in the back of my head. And then I'll also do the same for Asana in my client portals and give any feedback or answer any questions that clients have sent. And again, so simple, but when I tell you that's been a game changer, because it then gives me so much headspace the rest of the day. Like take when I'm recording this episode, it's middle of the day, more stuff has come into my inboxes that I need to deal with, in the next 24 hours, but I don't feel this rush to like do it, or I don't feel this like, kind of niche in the back of my head that's like, oh, you need to make sure you get that done, because I know, well, at the end of today I'm going to go through it all, and then start up tomorrow I'm going to do the same. So that like daily routine of like admin at the start and then at the very end has been so helpful. It's given me so much headspace in the day, and it also means that I'm replying to things not necessarily much quicker, but like it's just reliable. Like I never worry now, like, oh, what if I don't meet my like response times, because I just know, well, I do it twice a day, so they always get met. So those are kind of the first two things that somewhat link together, is just really using those reoccurring tasks in my calendar to not expect myself to think of them and remember to do them throughout the days, but actually just put them into the diary and having that morning and end of day routine. The next thing I want to share with you is a hack, and I'm going to call it a hack because it truly feels like one. I feel like I'm hacking the system when I do this. It's something that I've been doing for the last probably 8 years in my business. And when I tell you that this is like the first thing that comes into my head when people are like, how do you save time? How do you be productive? I'm like, this thing is your answer. If you're not doing this thing I'm about to share with you, your life is about to be changed and everything is about to become so much easier for you. And that is text replacements. Now, I'm an Apple user. It's definitely a function across all Apple products. I'm sure there's an Android version, but text replacements is basically where you set up rules in your devices where if you type in a phrase or a couple of letters or a little word, it will then expand that into something bigger. I feel like that's really confusing, but let me give you an example. When I type in H at A, literally 3, taps, H at A, that then expands into my full email address, hello@alicebenham.co.uk. Or when I type in company ad, that expands to my full company address. Or if I type in VAT num, that expands to my VAT number. You see where I'm going with this. I have this set up for so many key pieces of information. I have the same with like sales pages on my website. If you were to ask me, hey Alice, I want to listen to your podcast, I just type in STC for starting the conversation, and that'll expand into the links to all of my podcast kind of publication places. Or if I type in www.al, that expands to my full website address. I cannot tell you how much time that saves me, because I am never having to sit and like type out full addresses or full like links. I'm never having to go and copy and paste things. I have literally everything that I'm regularly sharing at my fingertips, and it's so speedy. I've got like my bank details. I've even got like regularly sent messages. When you just find yourself sending like the same message all of the time, I've got that on a copy and paste. Like when I tell you that probably 50% of my typing is helped with text replacements. I'm really not exaggerating. And it's one of those things that can feel like a bit of an ag to set up. But if you just start noticing, right, what are the things that I get really annoyed typing out again and again and again, and you just start to set up your text replacements one by one, your life is slowly going to be changed. When I come across people that aren't using text replacements, I honestly feel sorry for them, because the lack of efficiency that would exist in my life if I had to type all of those things out and go and copy and paste all those links and addresses, like, I don't even want to think about it. So that is my third, but if I'm allowed to say it, favorite and best tip from this episode is to use text replacements. Or if you can't use text replacements, use templates in general. Have a space, have a notes app, have a something where all of the things that you regularly need to share are copied, so that you can easily just go there and grab the information and share it with people. Us business owners got better things to do than writing out addresses and copy and pasting links all of the time. You heard it from me first. It's a very passionate topic for me, as you can tell. Okay, the next one that I want to share with you is, again, something I've been doing for a long time in my business. And if you've listened to this podcast before, you've heard me talk about productivity, this might be a familiar kind of tip to you, but it's something that I'm always evolving in my business and using in different ways, which is theming your days. For probably the last 6-7 years maybe in my business, my week has had a structure to it. Not just in the sense of like, oh yeah, I work like Monday to Friday, like 9 to 5-ish, but more like, okay, I generally do my client calls on these days. I do a lot of content creation on these days. I do that same thing every Wednesday afternoon. Of course, it's evolved over the years in my business, but at any one time, I will be able to tell you what my weekly rhythm is because I theme my days. At the moment, I do 99% of my client calls and meetings and kind of in the business work on a Tuesday and a Thursday. So if you were to come and watch me on those days, I'm most likely at my laptop on Zoom speaking to people, kind of, sat on calls. I tend to, at the moment, keep Wednesday and Friday open where possible. Wednesday for me is a day where I'll do things like this, recording podcast episodes or creating content or moving forwards on projects. Friday, I give myself as a bit of an optional one to kind of use how I need to. And a Monday at the start of the week is when I run my On It program in the morning. And then in the afternoon, it's a whole lot of project work, admin, like at my laptop stuff. Now, that's quite a loose kind of plan for the week. I know people that theme their days and even break it down in a much more structured way than that. But the point is here, it doesn't matter how you do it, but theming your days in a way that works for you is so helpful, because what it allows you to do is to really do deep work. I am someone where if I have a call booked in, I might have a 20-minute gap between calls. Nothing is happening in those 20 minutes that's meaningful because my brain just can't compute it. Or I know people joke of if you've got a call at 1 p.m, your whole morning is ruined because you're just prepping for it mentally. That's really for me where theming my days came from, was I was like, well, when I'm on calls, when I'm really doing that quite intense work, I just want to be in that zone. I don't want to be jumping around and doing admin and then content creation and then a client call and then going to an event. I just want to feel really intentional and get in the zone and stay in the zone. So that's the reason I think this helps you be more productive, is because you're not constantly switching modes. Your brain isn't having to switch between different tasks. You're just in the zone and therefore working more efficiently at that thing. Of course, there's always gonna have to be exceptions, and there's times where I'll kind of flex my schedule, if something just needs to work out a certain way, but it's not about keeping to that rhythm and that theming perfectly and being rigid to the point where then your business is struggling. It's more about just having that general theme to the week so that where possible, you are working in a way that feels most efficient to you. The other thing that you can consider when you're theming your days and structuring your week is also what works best for you. So thinking about how do your energy levels shift throughout the week, or even if you want to look at the month, if you have a cycle, how does that shift how you're feeling? I know a lot of people that build their structure of their weeks and kind of their month around how they know they're going to be feeling. And I love that, because we are so much more productive at certain points in the day, in the week, in the month. So what if we just asked more of ourselves when we're in that zone and perhaps eased off a little bit and we're kinder to ourselves and expected maybe a bit less in the other times? Good example for that for me is I know that in the mornings I am really fresh brained. I get so much done in a really short space of time at the start of the day. something similar at the end of the day is going to take me a lot longer. So I will structure the work I'm doing at different points, even within my days, to really work with that. So that is my next tip for you, to theme your days, to structure your week in a way that is going to have you doing similar things at a similar time, and also work best for you, your energy levels, and your preferences as well. Bonus tip for that is, if you have a lot of calls in your diary like me, using a calendar booking link is going to make it so much easier for you to slot people into that structure. I get it, right? It's hard to set boundaries if someone's like, oh, I really want to chat to you on a Wednesday, and it feels a bit awkward to be like, oh, I can't. I can do Wednesday, but I can't because I don't really want to. It doesn't really work for me. Again, if I need to flex, I absolutely will. But 9 times out of 10, people are more than happy to slot into whatever availability works for you, and they'll be checking as well what works on their end. So I found by having a calendar booking link where I'm not physically like talking options through with people and also just wasting time emailing, 10 times back and forth to find a date that works, I just send people a link. That link acknowledges when I want to do my calls. It's not going to offer you a time that isn't aligned for my schedule. So I know that people are booking in for times that work for me. And we're also saving loads of time because we're not going back and forth. So you're welcome. That's a little bonus tip for you as well. And the final thing that I want to share, and I've actually realized as I'm recording this, that this is actually 5 tips, not 4, which is very on brand. The final thing that I want to share with you, again, an obvious one, but one I think we always probably need a reminder of, which is hiring experts to play a role in helping something to get done. Now, this could obviously mean so many different things, but let me share what this looks like for me specifically, because as I was reflecting on this idea of like what helps me to be more productive, what came to mind is the way that I've really been working with team members for the last kind of year or two, which is working with experts in their field to get involved in a certain project or task where obviously their field of expertise is relevant, and have them play a really specific role that I know is also then going to help me the most. Let me give you an example of this. I like writing. I like writing copy. I like writing emails. I like, written marketing and content. However, I find it really hard to write something from scratch. If I'm sat with a blank kind of Google Doc, it takes me so much time and a lot of focus to actually get something drafted. However, if I am editing something that is already drafted or changing something that's at version 1, I am really effective. I'm really good at editing and then making something like the final product. So what I've learned is I don't necessarily need an expert to come in and like write the whole thing for me. And also that doesn't really work for me because I want to have oversight and I want to kind of tweak it and make it work for me. But instead it works for me to have an expert come in to do that version 1, who will then hand it back to me to kind of finish it, put it out into the world, do with it whatever it needs doing. Now that solution might not work for everyone, but for me, that's something I use across the board in my business. Take this podcast, for example. I really love thinking of the episodes, writing the outlines, recording them. I also really love the marketing side of it. The bit that really doesn't work for me and the bit that if I were doing it, it would hold up the process is the editing. So I outsource that. Or if I give you another example with my retreats, I love organizing them. I love project managing it, but I really don't love finding suppliers and finding venues and researching all of that. So I hire people to help me do that step and then I do the others. The reason I share this tip as kind of a final one is because I think there can be kind of a misconception with outsourcing that it's all or nothing. You either outsource the whole thing or you keep the whole thing. And actually what I realize in my business is I am most productive when I'm working in collaboration with other people. Not necessarily we're doing the same thing at the same time, but we're building this kind of team process where you do step 1, I do step 2, or I do step 1, you do step 2, I do step 3. I've really noticed that I'm way more productive when I'm outsourcing the bits that I'm not best at or the bits that just take me a lot of time and energy, and then I'm left to do those other pieces of the puzzle. I can see night and day, the time it will take me to pull together an email campaign is so much quicker, and also just my journey of doing that is so much more enjoyable when I have that expert involved in a step of the process. So that's the final thing I wanted to share that I think is always relevant in this conversation. Yes, we can think about getting the most out of our time in terms of how can we do everything quicker, but also we can think about how do we get the most out of our time by having other people's time help play a role as well. And how do you think about outsourcing through that lens of not just giving the whole thing away? It might be that that's right for you, but maybe what's right for you is a little bit more like what I do and going, right, what part of this process is least productive for me to do? Why is this getting stuck? And maybe I just need someone to help with that piece of the puzzle. So, in recap, the things that really help me in my business right now to be most productive and genuinely, hand on heart, save me time. I'm not lying, I'm not exaggerating. These are things that if I didn't do, I would not be as efficient as a business owner and I wouldn't get all the things done that I need to get done, are having reoccurring tasks in my calendar, having a morning and end of day admin sweep, again, in my calendar, using text replacements and templates for things that I'm regularly rewriting, theming my working days and structuring my week in a way that works for me, and finally, hiring experts to play a role in a process where maybe I get a little bit stuck. I would love to know which of these tips resonates with you. Maybe you want to think about giving one of these things a go and trying it out in your business. At the end of the day, everything around productivity is personal, right? So whenever I'm hearing content like this from other people, I think, right, what could I experiment with there? Right, I'm going to give that thing a go for 30 days and see if it works for me. You know, I think with a lot of kind of tools and hacks and tips, you just got to try it on for size. And if it doesn't work for you, that's great. You've learned a lesson, and then you can think about trying out something else that does work for you. We are constantly evolving as business owners, as people, as action takers. So what helped you last year might not be what helps you now. So maybe this is an invitation to check in on that and think about if there is anything you want to be doing or trying or experimenting with to help yourself be as efficient as possible, not because we are glamorizing the hustle and working hard for the sake of working hard, but because we want to be productive in order to maximize our output, work less if that's something that's important to us, and really just do the things we want to do without creating burnout and chaos in the process. That is what we are here for. That is what I am here for. And I want to thank you for tuning into this episode, whether you've been watching, whether you've been just listening. I really hope you found this valuable. I will be back next Tuesday with another chat where I'm actually doing a little bit more of a personal episode, all about my story and particularly my experience of being a very young entrepreneur. I started my business age 17 and I got a lot to say about the challenges and the advantages of that. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you're tuning into this to not miss out on that, and go forth and try one of these productivity hacks in your business. Let me know which one you're going to give a go. And if you have any tips for me, as you'll have heard in this episode, I'm all for productivity. So if there's anything that you think I should be testing out in my business, let me know. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.